The email came on a Tuesday morning, and my first thought was that it was spam. I almost deleted it. I was standing in the break room at work, still in my scrubs, waiting for the coffee machine to stop making that horrible grinding noise it always made, and I was scrolling through my inbox the way you do when you're not really reading anything. Delete, delete, archive, delete. But something about the subject line made me stop. Estate of Harold Keene. Beneficiary notification. I didn't know a Harold Keene. I stood there for a long time, long enough that one of the nurses from the third floor came in and asked if I was okay. I told her yes, just tired. I pocketed my phone and poured my coffee and spent the rest of my shift pretending I hadn't read it. That night, I looked him up. Harold Keene, 78 years old. Retired civil engineer. Lived most of his life in Asheville, North Carolina. He was my grandmother's younger brother, which made him my great-uncle, and I'd met him exactly twice. Once at a family reunion when I was 7, and once at my grandmother's funeral when I was 19. I remembered a tall man with a white beard who smelled like cedar and gave me a butterscotch candy from his coat pocket. That was all. His attorney called me the next morning. Professional, careful, speaking slowly the way people do when they're delivering information they expect will overwhelm you. He explained that my great-uncle had never married, never had children, had lived quietly and spent even more quietly, and that over the course of his life he had accumulated a considerable estate. He explained that he had updated his will the previous spring, shortly before his diagnosis. He explained that my grandmother, his sister, who had passed 4 years earlier, had always spoken of me. That he'd followed my life from a distance, that he had made a decision. I was to receive $1.9 million. I sat down on my kitchen floor. I don't know why the floor specifically. My couch was right there. But I sat down on the cold tile, and I put my back against the cabinets, and I just breathed. $1.9 million for a 29-year-old pediatric occupational therapist from Columbus, Ohio, who had been eating rotisserie chicken 3 nights a week because it was the most economical protein she could find. $1.9 million for someone who still had $34,000 in student loans and a 2016 Honda Civic with a passenger window that wouldn't roll all the way down. The attorney gave me a timeline. Probate would take a few months. I would need to come to Asheville to sign documents. He strongly recommended I find a financial advisor before any funds were transferred. I thanked him. I hung up. And then I did something I still think was the smartest decision of my life. I told no one, not my mom, not my older brother, not my best friend since middle school who knew every other secret I'd ever had. No one. Part of it was practical. The attorney himself had suggested discretion, said that unexpected inheritances had a way of complicating relationships. Said it with the measured tone of someone who had watched it happen many times. But part of it was something else, something quieter and more honest. I wanted to know who people were before the money existed. I wanted one more look at my life as it actually was, before everything shifted. Because here's the thing about my family. We loved each other. I genuinely believed that, and I still do. But money had always been a strange and uncomfortable presence in our dynamic. My brother had borrowed $1,800 from me 2 years earlier to cover a gap between jobs. He'd paid back about $400 of it, and we'd never discussed the rest. My mom had needed help with a car repair the previous winter, $600, which I didn't have easily but gave anyway. My aunt had gone through a rough patch after her divorce, and I'd sent $200 here, $150 there, through a few years of just until things stabilized. Things had stabilized as far as I could tell. The money had not come back. None of it was dramatic. None of it was the kind of thing you bring up at Thanksgiving. It was just the slow, quiet pattern of being the one in the family who said yes, who didn't make it weird, who absorbed the ask without complaint. And I'd never minded, not really, until I sat on my kitchen floor that morning and realized that I was about to have more money than I had ever imagined, and my first instinct was to hide it. That instinct told me something. I found a financial advisor in Columbus. I looked for someone with fiduciary certification and good reviews and an office that wasn't trying too hard to look impressive. Her name was Catherine, and she was in her 50s and had the calm, unhurried manner of someone who had heard everything and was surprised by nothing. I told her the full amount. She didn't blink. She talked to me for 2 hours about trust structures, tax implications, how to think about money you hadn't earned in the traditional sense. She recommended a fee-only attorney as well. She told me that the period between learning about an inheritance and actually receiving it was the most vulnerable time, psychologically speaking. People make promises, she said, to others and to themselves. Wait, she said, don't promise anything to anyone. I flew to Asheville and signed the papers and flew home and went back to work the next Monday as if nothing had happened. For a while, that was enough. I went through my regular life. The commute, the sessions with my patients, the grocery runs, the coffee with friends, and underneath all of it was this quiet, enormous thing that I carried alone. It wasn't as hard as I expected. It was almost a relief, in a way. Nothing about my life had changed yet, so I could still see it clearly. It was around this time that I started noticing things I'd always half noticed but never let myself fully see. My brother called on a Sunday afternoon. We talked the way we always did. Sports, some TV show he was watching, complaints about work, and then, near the end, casual as anything, "Hey, you still doing okay financially? I know things have been tight." He said it like he was checking on me. I said yes, things were fine. He said, "Good, good. Actually, I've been meaning to ask. You think you could do another short-term loan? Just to cover 1 month of rent while I figure out this freelance situation. Like $2,000. I'd pay it back by the end of the quarter." I said I'd have to look at my budget. He said no pressure. He texted me his Venmo that night. The freelance situation had started 8 months earlier. A few weeks after that, my aunt called. My mom's older sister, the one who'd gone through the divorce. She was looking at apartments, she said, trying to upgrade from the place she'd been in since things fell apart. "I found this really sweet 2-bedroom, she told me, voice bright and hopeful. "I just need help with the security deposit. It's $2,400. I'll pay you back in 6 months, I swear. You know I'm good for it." I thought about the previous amounts, spread across 4 years, that had never come back. I said I'd see what I could do. My best friend. We'd been close since 7th grade. The kind of friend who knew my childhood bedroom better than her own. Mentioned, over lunch, that she was thinking about taking a solo trip to Portugal. "I'm just so burned out," she said. And I understood. I really did. But then she said, "You're so good at saving. Would you ever consider doing like a friend's loan? Just a few hundred. I'm embarrassed to ask, but you're the only person I trust with this." She said it was for the plane ticket. She said she'd been talking about this trip for years. She said it while looking at her salad, not at me. And I understood something in that moment, sitting across from her, with my soup getting cold. It wasn't that these people were bad. They weren't. But they had all independently, without coordinating, arrived at the same conclusion about me. That I was safe. That I was the one you could ask. That my yes was reliable, my discomfort invisible, my limits theoretical. None of them had asked how I was doing before the ask. None of them had called just to call. I want to be fair here, because this is the part that could sound harsher than I mean it. Some of this is on me. I had trained people to see me a certain way. I was the responsible one, the stable one, the one who had her act together. I'd never pushed back. I'd never said I couldn't afford it when I could have, never made them sit with the discomfort of a no. So they kept asking, and every ask confirmed what they already believed, that my needs were smaller than theirs. I decided to test it. I want to explain the logic of this because I know how it sounds. And the truth is, I thought about it for weeks before I did anything. I turned it over from every angle. It felt, at times, manipulative. It felt, at other times, like the only honest experiment available. I had spent years being asked for help without anyone thinking too hard about whether I had the capacity to give it. Now I wanted to see what happened when the roles reversed. Not to punish anyone, just to see. I had a plan. I was going to call each of them, my brother, my aunt, my best friend, and a few others, and tell them I was in trouble. Nothing dramatic. Something plausible. I would tell them I'd gotten hit with unexpected medical bills from a procedure I'd had in the spring. True, there had been a procedure. The bills were mostly settled, but they didn't know that. I would tell them things were tight, that I hated to ask, that I just needed a short-term loan, say $1,000 to cover rent and get through the month. I would see what happened. I called my brother first. He answered on the second ring, and I could hear the game in the background. I told him what I'd planned to say. The medical bills, the tight month, just $1,000, just for a few weeks. He went quiet in a way that was different from his normal quiet. "Oh man," he said. That's rough. He asked a few questions. Which procedure? Was I okay? Did insurance not cover it? And they were caring questions. I want to give him that. But then the caring slipped into something else. He said, I would help you in a heartbeat. You know that, right? It's just, timing is the worst right now. I've got my own stuff happening. He mentioned a freelance situation. He mentioned that he had expenses I didn't know about. He said, you've got your income, you'll figure it out. You're the most resourceful person I know. He told me to let him know if I needed anything. He did not specify what anything meant. I thanked him and got off the phone and sat very still for a moment. The $1,800 he still owed me sat in my memory like a stone. My aunt was sympathetic in a way that was almost convincing. She said, "Oh, honey," she said, "I'm so sorry." She asked 3 times if I was doing okay emotionally. And then she said, "I'm in such a weird place right now financially, with the new apartment and everything." The apartment she'd needed $2,400 from me to help secure. "I just can't swing it right now," she said, "but I can bring you food." "I can do that. Do you want me to come over?" I said that was sweet. She never followed through on the food. My best friend's response was the one I kept coming back to, weeks later. She texted instead of calling, which already told me something. "Ugh, I saw you called. Been insane here. What's up?" I texted back a version of the situation. Medical thing, tight month. Would she be able to help with a small loan? She left me on read for 4 hours. Then, "Oh no. Are you okay? Money stuff is so stressful. I'm honestly wiped out right now after booking Portugal. So my account is pretty depleted. Can I help in some other way?" 3 exclamation points for Portugal. 1 question mark for me. I put my phone face down and looked at the ceiling. I called 2 more people. A cousin who I'd helped move 3 years ago and lent $300 for a deposit that I never got back, and a coworker I'd grown close to over 2 years, someone I thought of as a genuine friend. The cousin said she was between things and maybe check back in a few weeks. The coworker said she wished she could help, but she just had some unexpected car costs. And I noticed she didn't ask what the procedure had been, didn't ask if I was scared, just offered a sympathetic face emoji and moved on. I went for a walk that evening. It was early November, cold and gray, the leaves mostly gone. I walked for about an hour without really going anywhere, just moving through the neighborhood, watching people take their dogs out and carry their groceries in and live their ordinary Tuesday evening lives. And what I felt wasn't anger exactly. It was something lonelier than anger. It was the recognition that I had been maintaining something, an idea of closeness, a feeling of being held by these relationships, that had required my constant, invisible effort to keep up. And when I stopped holding it, it didn't hold itself. There was 1 call I hadn't made. I'd been putting it off for reasons I couldn't entirely explain. My mom's younger sister, my Aunt Lorraine. She was 61, recently retired from 23 years as a mail carrier, living in a small house in Dayton that she owned outright but was always 1 major repair away from chaos. Her husband had died 6 years ago. She drove a 2009 Corolla that needed new brake pads. She called me every few weeks just to talk, asked about my patients, remembered the names of my friends. She was the one who'd driven 3 hours to sit with me in a waiting room when I had that procedure in the spring. She'd brought me a thermos of soup. I almost didn't call her, not because I thought she'd say no. I honestly had no idea what she would do, but because it felt wrong to pull her into this. Like including her was somehow unworthy of what she was. But I called. She picked up on the first ring, the way she always did. "Baby, hi. I was just thinking about you." She asked how my week was going. She asked about a patient I'd mentioned the last time we talked, a little boy who'd been struggling with motor coordination, and I'd told her about a breakthrough we'd had. She remembered his first name. She asked if he'd had another good session. I let the conversation breathe for a few minutes, and then I told her the same story. The medical bills, the tight month, the $1,000. She didn't hesitate. Not the way I expected someone to hesitate when money is involved. She just said, "Of course. Do you need it now, or can it wait until Friday when I get paid?" And then she said, "Actually, you know what? I have enough in checking to do it tonight. Just text me your Zelle." And then, "Are you doing okay? Like, actually okay? That procedure wasn't too long ago. Are you feeling all right?" I had to put the phone down for a second. Just for a second. I told her I was fine, that I was okay, that I was sorry for asking. She said, "Don't be sorry." She said that's what we do. She said she'd been meaning to call anyway because she'd found some old photos of my grandmother and wanted to know if I'd like copies. We talked for another 40 minutes. I transferred the money back to her the next day with a note that just said thank you for being you. She texted back a heart. She didn't ask why I'd sent it. I thought for a long time about what to do with everything I now knew, with both kinds of knowledge, the knowledge about the money and the knowledge about the people. I'm not a confrontational person. That's not a virtue, necessarily. It's partly why the dynamic had developed the way it had in the first place. But I knew I didn't want dramatic scenes. I didn't want the satisfaction of revealing and watching people squirm. That's not who I want to be. What I wanted was simply to reorganize, to let each relationship find its natural level, without my invisible labor holding it somewhere above where it would otherwise float. I called my financial advisor and we spent a full afternoon mapping out what I actually wanted my life to look like. We talked about paying off my student loans, which I did, quietly, in one transaction that felt nothing like I expected and everything like I needed. We talked about building an emergency fund and a retirement account and what thoughtful giving looked like when you could actually afford to give. I bought a modest condo in a neighborhood I liked. Nothing extravagant, but mine. The Honda is now also mine in a new way. I paid it off and fixed the window. I set up a generous fund for On the Rain. Not a gift exactly. I didn't want to embarrass her, and she would have been embarrassed. I told her I'd come into some unexpected money and that I wanted to help her get ahead of the house repairs she always mentioned and maybe get into a newer car. I told her she could say no. She was quiet for a moment. She said, "You don't have to do this." I said I wanted to. She said, "Okay, thank you. I don't know what I did to deserve you." I told her she drove 3 hours in the rain to sit in a waiting room. That's what she did. She cried a little. So did I. With the others, I didn't cut anyone off dramatically. I didn't write letters or send speeches. I just slowly, gradually stopped being as available. I stopped picking up every time. I stopped responding to Venmo requests that came without a preceding conversation. I let certain threads of contact thin out naturally, and I noticed that most of them thinned without anyone pulling on the other end. My brother called more frequently for a few months, which surprised me, and then less. My best friend and I still see each other a few times a year, and it's friendly. Warm even, but I no longer hold the shape of the friendship in place from my side alone. Whatever it is now, it's that. I'm 30 now. I work the same job, which I love, because I love it, not because I need it in the way I used to need it. I eat the rotisserie chicken sometimes still, out of habit and because it's genuinely good. I have a second bedroom in my condo that I've turned into an office, which is something I've wanted for 3 years. I have a savings account that does not give me anxiety when I look at it. I have a relationship with money that feels, for the first time, like a relationship I'm in control of. And I have Aunt Lorraine, who calls every few weeks, who asks about my patients, who remembered the name of a little boy she never met. I've thought a lot about what my great-uncle was trying to give me. He never knew me well. He sent me a butterscotch candy when I was 7, and a firm handshake when I was 19, and, eventually, a number with a lot of zeros attached to it. But I think what he was really giving me was an opportunity to see clearly, to have one moment of total visibility before everything changed, and I think he would be glad to know that I used it. Not for revenge, not for anything dramatic, but just to finally understand the shape of the life I was actually living so that I could choose, deliberately, what to build instead. The coffee machine at work still makes that horrible grinding noise. I still wait for it every morning. Some things don't change, and that's fine. Some things do, and that's fine too. I keep a butterscotch candy in my desk drawer now. I'm not entirely sure why, but every time I open that drawer, I think of a tall man with a white beard who saw something in me from a distance and decided to trust it. I've thought about the word deserve a lot since all of this happened. People say it casually. She deserved better. He got what he deserved. And I used to say it too without really examining what it meant. But now I think deserving is less about fate handing you something and more about what you've quietly been building all along without realizing it. Aunt Lorraine didn't show up for me because the universe owed her a reward. She showed up because that's who she'd been, consistently, for years. Through my grandmother's illness, through her own husband's death, through every ordinary Tuesday when she called just to ask how I was. She'd been practicing that kind of love her whole life. So when the moment came, it wasn't a decision for her. It was just what she did. That's what real character is, I think. It's not what you choose when the stakes are obvious. It's what you do automatically, without calculating. And the others? I don't think they were bad people. I want to keep saying that because I believe it. But they had been practicing something too, without knowing it. They had been practicing the habit of seeing me as a resource, of letting my generosity absorb their discomfort, of never quite looking directly at what they were asking or what it cost me. That habit didn't appear out of nowhere when I called them in a crisis. It had been there the whole time. The test didn't reveal a hidden side of anyone. It just made the existing pattern impossible to ignore. That's the part that required the most honesty from me, recognizing my own role in it. I had been practicing something as well. I had been practicing invisibility, saying yes when I meant something more complicated, absorbing things silently, letting the dynamic calcify because confronting it felt harder than maintaining it. That's not noble. That's just avoidance dressed up as generosity, and the inheritance didn't fix that in me. It just gave me enough space to finally see it. Wisdom, I've come to think, isn't something that arrives all at once. It accumulates slowly, in small recognitions, the moment you notice a pattern you've been living inside of, the moment you understand that your silence has been a choice, the moment you realize that protecting everyone else's comfort at the cost of your own honesty is not kindness. It's a different kind of selfishness. Those recognitions are uncomfortable. I won't pretend otherwise. Sitting with what I learned about my brother, about my best friend, about the shape of those relationships, that was not easy even when I wasn't angry. But there's something that happens when you stop holding a false version of things in place. The real version, whatever it is, gets to exist. And the real version of my relationship with Aunt Lorraine, unperformed, unasked for, just honest, turned out to be more than enough, more than I knew I had, more than I thought to want. I keep coming back to that butterscotch candy. A small thing. A man I barely knew who chose to see me anyway. There's something in that gesture, in the act of paying attention to someone from a distance and deciding they matter, that I'm still learning from. I think that's what I want to carry forward. Not the money, not the test, not even the clarity it gave me. Just that. The practice of actually seeing people, of showing up without being asked, of being, on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of person who calls just to call. That's the thing worth building. Everything else follows from it.